more bacillus, or you think will be more research around other types of bacteria?
I think it will be a combination of both of those activities. So I think there are different research organizations that are focused on both of those. So I think, there will be those that choose to focus primarily on the bacillus and the spore-forming bacteria, and I think there will be other organizations that continue to look at the diversity of microbial populations globally, trying to find new strains that provide the probiotic advantages to the animals. And so there are new strains of bacteria constantly being identified within the environment that might have potential utility. So I think it will probably continue for some time to be both focusing on the spore formers as well as non-spore forming bacteria because what you're really trying to do is create the ideal cocktail. It's not very often that a probiotic product will just contain a single organism, a single bacterium. Usually it's a combination of several organisms, and each organism provides a particular advantage to the bacterial population, the community of bacteria within the animal's GI tract. And so that's why you'll sometimes see, combinations of bacillus with yeast or yeast and fungus. And so it tends to be trying to find the best mixture of organisms that provide the desired impact on the animal's GI tract. So that's kind of one of the areas where people are focused in terms of exploring direct-fed microbials and probiotics.
Yeah, so I understand in the industry and in many universities they are doing this, but in terms of if we go back to the company like Elanco, so the traditional antibiotic company, you think they still invest a lot of the R&D budget or resources on the probiotic research like this, or how will these companies act?
Yeah, I think that the traditional pharmaceutical companies will make some investments in the probiotic space, and also looking at enzymes, the administration of enzymes. So instead of live organisms, actually incorporating the enzymes from the organisms. So I think that's another area that will get increased investment from companies that have traditionally produced antibiotics. And then another area that I think these companies have been making some investments in are other approaches to have alternatives to antibiotics. And so amongst these would be things such as immune modulator products. And so these are products that, for example, prevent a disease.
Immune modulator?
An immune modulator. And so instead of the product being something that directly kills a bacterium like an antibiotic, what these immune modulators do is they alter the animal's immune response. So they target the host animal instead of the bacterium, and they increase the level of immunity in the animal so that the animal does not get the disease, so its own immune system can overcome the invading bacterium, for example, and prevent disease. And so this is an area that's very similar in humans This is the current newest approach.
In your introduction, actually in Elanco, you did some research on probiotics as well. So my understanding is the traditional antibiotic pharmaceutical companies, actually they have been invest at least some of the R&D resources in the probiotics research or studies like that all along the way. It's just now it comes to the point probably they will invest more and more into this DFM or probiotics products or category, right?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, I think that there's a number of areas of research, as I mentioned before. People in the pharmaceutical industry, even when they were working with traditional antibiotics, they were working to try and understand how does the use of an antibiotic change the bacterial community within the animal's intestinal tract. And so that type of research was very much directly applicable to the probiotic type activities. Also, they would notice that there might be populations of animals that seem to grow more quickly, but when they looked at the genetics of the animal, they were identical to the animals that were not growing as quickly. So they started looking at the intestinal bacteria of those pigs or animals that were growing more quickly, and they saw, this group that grows more quickly has a greater number of a particular bacterium in their GI tract. And so, it was by observation of differences between groups of animals that were performing differently. And so, yes, the traditional industry has been doing some of these types of evaluations for many years.
So then what will be your comments? Because I heard many, at least the professors in university, when they talk about probiotics or even prebiotics or yeast, the one of the key problem or barrier will be is not the consistent performance versus if you compare with antibiotic. Well, of course, you said a lot about the study on the mechanism of the how they make the function, but to the farms, in the end, it has to show the performance. If you cannot show consistent performance on the probiotics, how can you replace the antibiotic? Or people will say we will need to put on top of it. So how do you see that part?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The farmer, the producer of the animals, they really don't care what mechanism the product uses. All they care about is that they're getting the benefit in terms of the performance of the animals and the economics. And so, I think that getting probiotics, prebiotics, all of these antibiotic alternatives to the level of consistency of performance in the field, in the actual use, that is one of the challenges that the industry as a whole is trying to address right now. And because the use of these types of products has been a relative minority up until the changes in the regulatory environment, it just was not subject to the same level of scientific scrutiny that traditional antibiotic research was being conducted at. And so what we're seeing as we're transitioning towards a post-antibiotic era for growth promotion is that, academic laboratories, industrial laboratories are digging in much more robustly to understand the mechanisms. And the belief that once we get a better handle on the mechanisms of how these products work and how we can stabilize them and get them to be more consistent, and so I think that, again, in this transition period, there may be some producers that are hesitant to use the probiotics because the costs may be, disadvantageous relative to traditional antibiotics. But I think that it's a combination of the improvements in the costs and also the changes in the regulatory environment. At some point, if the Food and Drug Administration says you cannot use, tetracyclines as antimicrobials or antibiotics for growth promotion, well, they just won't be available. And so the producers, even though they may have to pay more for the probiotic, it'll be the only option they have, for example. So I don't know exactly when we will get to that point in the transition, but I believe it will come. And so I think there's both an economic and a regulatory component that will drive the transition forward.
Yeah, so if I suppose I don't know enough about Elanco, how the business is organized by products, for example, if you can please explain to me a little bit for the antibiotic, it go by the type of product or how it's go to organize the business. And probably right now it's like this, then in the future the business structure will change to include probiotics or the other alternatives you mentioned, right? So
I think that all of the companies, Elanco, but also the other companies that have had a significant portion of their sales being associated with antimicrobials, traditional antibiotics, they are all in the process of figuring out how do we replace this portion of our product portfolio with an alternative that provides better growth opportunities for their businesses. And of course, this can be accomplished in a number of ways. For example, you can certainly look for other alternatives to antibiotics and continue to focus in the livestock industry space. But another way that you can do it is reduce your focus on livestock and start to increase the amount of investment that you make in the companion animal industry. So pets, products for pets. Typically, products for pets have a higher margin, and so they may have a benefit if you transition your product portfolio to have an increased number of companion animal products. That's another way of overcoming the reduction in sales due to the loss of the antibiotics in livestock, for example. So you have to look very broadly at the differences in terms of strategies that a company such as Zoetis or Bayer or Elanco utilize to adapt to what is essentially a changing marketplace for their businesses.
For example, for Elanco, I don't know the number. It could be a rough number. How will be the sales revenue for antibiotic and how the percentage goes to the livestock and the appendix animals that you mentioned? I think that you can probably get that information looking at the annual reports and the quarterly reports from the company. So thinking about the publicly available information sources, I believe that the last quarterly report for the first quarter of this year, roughly 75%
of the Elanco revenue was livestock, food animal based, and roughly 25% was companion animal based. But if you looked at the